You know, it's so difficult to treat anybody with any neurological changes or neurological conditions without the whole team approach, because everybody has such specific skills and areas of work that they're working with those individuals. So it's like building a house. I always say this to people, you know, if you build a house, you need an architect, you need a carpenter, you need the plumber, you need the electrician, and then you need the guy that's actually building the actual structure of the house. You need all those elements to make the whole. And when we are building somebody back up again in, you know, with their rehabilitation and getting them back after their injury, you need all elements of the team. So in your experience, just shout out for me, who are the people that you work with? Which professionals do you work with?
OTs a lot of the time.
OT? I'm going to write some of this up because I'll come back to it. This is where I break this. Seeing as I asked you to get it for me. Okay, OT, physio, district nurses, did someone say? Yeah. Anyone else?
Palliative teams we work with.
Palliative, okay. GPs, very important, yeah. What about specialists from the hospitals?
We work with consultants.
Yeah, which particular areas?
We have psychiatric.
Yeah. Anyone else? Geriatric consultants, older people?
Yeah.
Occasionally we work with nutritionists.
Yeah, brilliant, yeah. Dietitians, similar bracket. Anyone else? Podiatrists? Anybody, do you work with orthotists? Yeah? It really depends on the client, obviously, and what their conditions are. But if you are thinking neurologically, there are some really key players, especially if you're dealing with the people that have got the cognitive changes and that behavioural change. You can't really do anything without the Emmas of this world, the neuropsychologist. So they are key. And it's always one of the first questions. When somebody rings me up with a new referral, I'll always say, so who's involved already? What team have they got around them? And the alarm bells often will go for me if I hear that they've only got, oh, well, they've got a physio. Okay, and what areas are they working on? Oh, you know, and the GP has referred the physio, etc. Okay, great. But where you're talking about this behaviour, you're talking about their memory. So who's managing that? Oh, well, they see a neurologist. So it's always a neurologist. They're seeing a neurologist. Okay. And what's the neurologist done? They made any referrals? No, but they think an OT would be great. And I'm like, okay, because that's an awful tall order for the occupational therapist to go in there. Because as I'll explain in a minute, neuropsychologists I see as the people that put the scaffolding up around a person. They're the person that break it all down for them and make them work out what they need as a support network around them and have their scaffolding. And the scaffolding is the strategies that they are given, the compensatory activities, the strategies to manage situations of behaviour, to recall their memory. The occupational therapist works hand in hand with those neuropsychologists, because what we do is all, as everybody says, the fun stuff. We take them out to do the activities, the leisure, the social, but also activities of daily living. And what we're looking at is basically putting the strategies that they're learning in the clinic room, face to face with their clinical psychologist or neuropsychologist, back out into their real life and using that. Okay, so there's some of the key areas, but then you get more specifics. So with physio, you know, if somebody's got a really obvious mobility problem or a left arm that isn't working, or they've had a stroke and they need some of that type of physio, by the time they're out in the community, they're either going back into a clinic to have outpatient, and then you guys will be given a program that you need to run through every single day to run through and maximise, or you might be able to get to them to the gym and do some work with the gym and the personal trainers that are lined up. There's another big area that has been developed over the years that I've been doing this, and that's vestibular physiotherapy and balance physiotherapy, where people have had really major brain injury in their midbrain at the back, and they're starting to get this terrible feeling and sense of falling over all the time, and they're now relating this quite heavily to brain injury, where people have had their road traffic accidents, then suddenly it's like, why are they suddenly getting all these visual disturbances and panic attacks and feeling like they're falling over? And a lot of the time it's because they've actually got a damage to that balance and coordination part of their brain, the cerebellum that we were talking about before. So now the good thing about it is it can be recoverable. You can actually get it back. And it's with really intensive exercises, and the physiotherapists are very specialised in this area, and a lot of the time it makes them worse before they get better, because it makes them vomit and have terrible headaches, but they've got to kind of get through those elements to get themselves working on their brain again, because the eyes end up taking over. Okay, so yeah, massive team, lots of people, but the key people are you guys. As Emma was saying, we go in 2 hours a week. You know, often my funding will be 1 hour a week, if not 2. I don't work for the NHS anymore. I got very frustrated with not being able to actually do my job. I was in a managerial position anyway, but everything was cut, and everybody was like, yeah, you can get 6 weeks of therapy and then that's it. For these people, unfortunately, brain injury is not a sexy rehabilitation. It goes on and on and on. And like I said, you've got people that 16 years post-injury, they're still needing support with their life events. They need basically support. So I came out, and that's why I do independent work. But I work a lot with people that have had personal injury claims. So they are going through medico-legal claims, and they are going through situations where they're getting their rehabilitation paid for by insurance companies. So a bit controversial, but ultimately it's giving people chance because of the situation that they were in that they never expected to be in. So that's where a lot of my funding comes from when I work. So what's the difference between rehabilitation and care? Because if you are working with somebody who is in a neuro rehabilitation program with all this team of people around them, we will be expecting you to do rehabilitation. So what do you see the difference between the two?
I think it sort of goes hand in hand, whereas we have, when both the care and the rehabilitation kind of works together in the sense is that you create a plan and then you work on it. The care side may be more like a day-to-day thing, whereas rehabilitation is more of a structured thing that's going to happen over a period of time, whereas you would need the care as well with it on a day-to-day basis, whereas you do, from 1 hour to the other, the stuff that you need probably. But I think even in rehabilitation, you need a certain amount of care, and vice versa.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
I suppose rehabilitation, you have like a goal at an end, so you're working to sort of restore a level of independence, whereas care, although you have goals, it's more of an ongoing thing.
Yeah. Great. So the way I look at it is, if you have the two individuals, always come back to those individuals in the middle of it all with everything going on around them. Essentially, rehabilitation is much more active. It's facilitating, supporting, motivating that individual to take on their own function and promoting their independence, okay? So I always see it as a bit more passive and active. So care is kind of more done to someone. That's the simplest way of putting it. So if you've got care, so this is where it gets very complicated when we're looking at packages of care from social services or from CCG, or they go in and assess, and we're saying we need support workers, we need buddies, or we need rehabilitation assistants to work with our clients who are on a rehabilitation program. We want those individuals to sit on their hands and allow those people to have chance to practice their activities of daily living, to have 2.5, 3 hours to get washed and dressed in the morning if that is required, to be able to go and experience the theatre, but they need to book their own tickets, they need to organise their own transport, and it needs to be a project and a programme on which to work towards. Care is done to them. So somebody comes in, strips them off, puts them in the bath, gets them out, dries them, puts the cream on, gets them dressed, basically feeds them, and then says, right, we're off out today and we're going to the theatre, and it's all done for them. That's a really basic way of putting it, but it's exactly what we are trying to unpick a lot with these clients. You often get the whole, well, I pay you to look after me, therefore I'm not going to do it. So again, this is where, as therapists, we have to come in and we have to unpick that with the clients, and we have to say to them, okay, but you know, your goal is I want to be independent in doing this. If your carers are coming in and they are following what you are asking us to do, and you have asked the occupational therapist to help you make that Victoria sponge cake, we've broken it all down and we know what we've got to do to practice all of that, you've got to do it. I'm not going to sit there while you tell me what to do, or you're not going to sit in the kitchen and just watch me. You need to be participating within it. So that's kind of the difference. So it's active change for a person who's becomes disabled, and from whatever level of function they're at after their disability, after their injury, their accident, their diagnosis, okay, we are then optimally maximising their physical, their cognitive, their social aspects, okay? We're looking at the whole person, always keeping that person in the middle of it all. Trying to restore someone to health, to have an active and involved life. And care includes the promotion of health, prevention of illness, and the care of ill, disabled and dying people, okay? Neurorehabilitation is exactly the same, okay? But I think with neuro, we know, and what we're understanding from neurorehabilitation is the way in which you actually carry out the rehabilitation is key to gains, how you meet your gains, how you reach your goals, how you get the steps to achievement, okay? Because as we've been talking about, when the brain has that accident and has that break, and the cells disappear. So if we talk about Amanda and her brain tumour has been removed, there is obviously going to be a huge area of her brain now that is damaged, that has had cells that are dead and they will not return, okay? And from that, she's going to have a whole list of impairments. That's where you start, whole list of impairments. Then you also have a whole list of her activities that she can no longer participate in. One of them probably being work. You know, she can't function in her life anymore. She can't organise her diary anymore. She can't do any of those things anymore. So what we have to do is look at, well, what part of this, through neurorehabilitation, are we going to be able to get back? Is there any way that we can get that back? Now, I've just said to you, those cells are dead. So how is that supposed to happen? Basically, if a bomb went off in the middle of the M25 and a great big crater happened in the M25, you wouldn't be able to go down that route anymore. You wouldn't be able to use it one way or the other. The messages aren't going to, you know, no one's going to get through. So what happens is we all go, oh, need to use another route. Okay, so you get your maps out and everything, there'll be signs all over the place, and suddenly we're rerouted and we're off on an A road and we're, disappearing off around the crater, off on the A roads, and then we hit back onto the main motorway. Doing that is going to take a lot of effort, because we're all going to suddenly have to use our conscious attention again and conscious mind and work out where we're going and what we're doing. It's also going to take us time, because we've got to remember it, because actually that was my route to work every single day, and now there's a great big hole in the road I've got to work out, so I've got to keep practicing and doing that. I've got to keep going that route until they come up with another solution, but actually this is the way it's going to happen now. That is exactly what happens with neurorehabilitation, with this lovely word that has now been discovered called neuroplasticity. Okay? About a month ago, I don't know if anybody saw, but Andrew Marr was on telly and he did his documentary for the BBC. He had a massive stroke about 2 years ago, okay, and he basically put it down to the fact that he was overdoing it. The classic out of that programme shows that he's still overdoing it. He's still going to push himself, still going to go for every single goal, but essentially what he is doing alongside this is trying to find the cure for his disability, which is basically his left side, I think it is, that he had his stroke, okay, and he has very limited movement and use of his left upper limb. So he is now on this strive to essentially get new cells any way he can to retrain the brain and to basically get this hand working again. The reality of it is, if we go back to psychological acceptance, awareness, insight, it's not going to happen. He's never going to get a full functional return hand. It's just not possible. He is quite a long way down his rehabilitation, as in 2 years. So there is certain things that you have to get to an acceptance point. But the man that he is, pre-accident, was drive. He's got to do everything to the best of his ability. Not going to change that. So we've got to work with that. Because I did work with him and I know exactly what he's like. So essentially it's like, if you say no, he'll go, right, try harder. What he showed on that programme was neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity is basically exactly what I was explaining to you in axons and neurons firing on the road. Okay, so the M25 isn't available anymore. So our route to being able to move our arm like this blows up. Bang, it's dead, it's gone. So what we then end up doing is we have to tell that brain to do it in a different way and reroute. And the ways that we do that are through repeat. Do it the same way every time. So this is why you end up doing passive range of movement. So you have machines now that is the movement, that everything goes on with that movement, because what you're trying to do is get that triggering and rerouting of that axon and neurons and those synapses firing, but using different ones and retraining the brain. And you've obviously seen and heard over the years all about retrain, brain retrain. You know, you've got the apps on the phones, you've got the books, you know, do a crossword a day, keep your brain alive, do this, go and learn a language when you retire, because actually what you want to do is keep the brain, because there is evidence, as it says up there, that cognitive rehabilitation stimulates neuroplasticity processes due to its direct effects on the cognitive areas of the brain. It makes your synapses pop, basically. It gets that current flowing. So if we know that, and we know that there's an injury in the brain, what we're trying to do in neurorehabilitation is get those pathways rerouted, the pathways of life that we've taught rerouted. If you go back to paediatric, to children, I treat paediatric cases. I treat those children that have had a road traffic accident or that later they became brain anoxia. They haven't even got anywhere near the stages of life development that any of us have. They haven't even had to be independent, some of them. You know, I'm treating a 5-year-old at the moment. I mean, that child has never been properly dressing herself independently anyway. So for us, actually, the paediatric brain is quite easy to change and manage because those routes and those pathways aren't there in the first place. So you have to teach them and keep repeating things and do it in the same way consistently all the time. Practice makes perfect, as practice triggers the plasticity. Edit that bit. So essentially, that's, you know, again, this plastic moldable thing. So this is why, you know, when you're thinking, God, this is so tedious and boring, I can't believe the therapist has asked me to do this, or the physio, I've got to do it every day, twice a day. The way that you reinforce it for yourself to do it is, I'm doing it because we've got to give it this chance to see if we can actually get any results here and make any change. And you also need to feed that back to the client. The reason that we're doing this is to see if we can get that brain working in the best way it can. What you also have to recognise, though, is by doing this and having this process, is exhausting. That brain, you know, we know what it's like. We suddenly have to change, we have to be on the ball, we have to focus. Oh my God, there's a change in the road. Right, I'm going to follow the directed signs. I better just change my sat nav. I better go and do this. You're problem solve, problem solve, problem solve. By the time you've got to the place that you've got to, you're feeling pretty exhausted because you've actually demanded of your brain in a different way and asked it to do something in a different way. Multiply that by 10 for somebody who's got a brain injury, who is basically missing elements of their brain because their fatigue is going to be huge. And that's why when you do the repetitive practice, it's got to be small chunks and it has to be broken down. Okay. So rehabilitation process, I'm sure it's very similar to what you're doing in care plans and what you're looking at. You go in and you assess. So I've got a case at the moment, wonderful girl, okay, and she was in a taxi and she was 9 years old, and basically the taxi was involved in a car accident and she was thrown from the back seat right the way through to the front seat. She has multiple facial scarring, etc. She's had about 10 reconstructive surgeries on her face. But the main injury for her was obviously that force on her frontal lobe. Now at 9 years old, again, her brain is not fully developed. She hasn't got those tracks and those pathways, her cognitive ability, her awareness, her emotions, her personality. So really, a lot of her family know her as Nadia who's had the brain injury. That's how they, you know, they don't know her, or they remember parts of her personality, but really the person that now is 22, she's been longer as the brain injured person than actually as the person before the brain injury. So they recognise and understand her as that. She came out of boarding school with her GCSEs. She went to a specialist school and she was boarding every week. And then she went home to her mother, who was basically a mother of 11 children, and she was the youngest. And she was the last one at home. All her life has been structure, routine, people telling her what to do. She's never had the chance to actually explore whether she can do any of this of her own volition, of her own initiation. So she basically was set up in an independent living trial. She was moved into the community and she was given a flat to trial an independent living, because we needed to work out where's she's been so cushioned, supported and scaffolded all her life. Where are actually the issues going to be? What's going on? She is with a 24/7 care package, night and day. And we've gone in there and we've made our assessments and our problem formulation. And the biggest issues really for her are these frontal lobe challenges. Big issues that we're finding at the moment is she's addicted to social media because she's quite isolated. So she's on social media. She's having inappropriate relationships on the internet. She is now making contact with people that are not particularly savoury and asking her to send pictures of herself, and she has no awareness of the fact that that's not appropriate. So some of these really obvious things that, you know, that we know about and we're very aware of, we hadn't really sort of taken that on board because school were very aware of having to protect that and shut down these things, but suddenly she's in the big wide world and that's what's happening. It's bleeping up on her phone and tempting her all the time. She's on YouTube and watching stuff, and so she's now exploring the bigger world. The biggest thing though that we found is without a structure, without a routine, she doesn't do anything. She has no initiation to go, I haven't got any clothes in my wardrobe, I need to wash them. So at the moment, we're doing so much work with the support work team in how to prompt, how to support, how to initiate a routine. We are now 4 months down the line in the independent living trial, and having started from a very, very highly supported environment for her with posters on the wall and guidance and routines. So going back to her boarding school life, we are now being able to withdraw all of that and getting her to do those things automatically. She's learnt to do that. The neuroplasticity is still there. We're still forming those cognitive skills, her chief executive skills, her planning and organising skills. She's got a great big schedule on the wall, great big whiteboard. She has her laundry time booked in, her cleaning time booked in, her shopping time booked in, her meal planning booked in. Everything has had to be taught right from the word go. And then now that we've got through that and she's doing it automatically, we're looking at voluntary work. So she's just started this week at Oxfam. She's doing a great job. She's got 2 afternoon sessions, and she's also decided to learn British Sign Language. So we've got her on a 5-week starting course in a local adult education. And this again will be brought in and facilitated, but actually what we're doing is saying, when you're at work, when you're at the course, you don't need your support workers anymore. Because again, we're just testing the waters, we're testing these things out. So this is our assessment process with her. Problems formulated, work out an outcome measure, i.e. independence or not independence, and the levels in between. What support does she need, verbal or physical, or that's our kind of outcome measure. That's my timer. Goal setting. Everyone knows goal setting, don't they? We've all got goals in our life, what we work towards, what's meaningful. Action plan, how do we get to those goals? Break it all down. Who does what element? Always, like I said, support workers are key in that. We can't be there all the time. We set up the formulation, we work out with her what her goals are, how's she going to do that, hand it over to the support workers. Sorry. No, we do come in and check it. It's not over to you, that's it. Treatment revision, that comes out from your notes. Support worker notes are essential as part of a rehabilitation programme. We can't do anything without it. That's the ABC charts, that is daily what's going on, that's getting her to record her diary for her memory work, that's all of those elements. And then we keep going, outcome measures, we keep going until we get to discharge. But also, one of the key things of the rehabilitation for me is finding out what is the most important thing for that person, what is meaningful. It's the first element, and my challenge with everybody that I meet is I can't work with anyone unless they identify to me what they want to do. And I've got a reputation now for saying the sky's the limit, because basically I never say never to anyone. So I have had people learn to fly, and I have had people go on their holiday to America when they're in a massive wheelchair and they just want to go and see their auntie. And I have got people onto telly, and I have got people doing all these things, because ultimately, if you in that first instance of meeting them turn around and say, well, no, that's just, let's be realistic, you've lost them. You've got to build that trust. You've got to feel like they've got to feel that you are listening and hearing and understanding that at the end of the day, they are another human being with a whole set of problems and lists of issues that we are accepting. They might be challenges, but they are not going to be the ultimate, no, you can never do that again. So that's part of the insight model that I work on, is actually, if that's your goal, how do we get there? And then we start working on, well, it didn't go smoothly as we thought that way, how do we change it and how do we work this way? And then their insight starts coming in and going, well, actually, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that as well as I thought. Maybe I need to change it a bit. And that's the process that is used with purposeful activity. We all know what activities of daily living are. That's the OT gold standard. How you get up in the morning, how you wash, how you dress, how you cook, how you clean, shop, look after others. I work a lot with mothers that have had brain injury and they've got to look after their children. What was their role before? Always go back to who were they, what was going on before. Is that realistic? Are they going to get back to work? If that's their goal, you have to work on it with them. Even if you might find that, there's absolutely no way. But if you start with that, no, it's not going to happen, we need to change, let's find another goal for you, you've lost them. You've got to work out, okay, so what's the steps to achievement? Where do we start with this? What's your journey to work like? Simple. What do you wear when you go to work? Okay, have you been able to get your suit on recently? So why don't we start with that? Those tiny things start making them more and more aware of what it is that they can and can't do, and why they might need to change that, or why they might need carers to come in and do it, so that they can maximise their energy for the good stuff and the stuff that they really want to do. So that's all part of the insight and awareness. Activity analysis, bit complicated, and I can't do it in 5 minutes, but essentially it's breaking down an entire activity. This is what occupational therapy does. It looks at the preparation of a cup of tea. So everybody goes, oh God, yeah, OT. They check you, make a cup of tea and then you discharge from hospital. I'm like, yeah. But if you look at all the elements involved in making a cup of tea, the motor processes, their movement, bending, reaching, coordinating, handling, grip, manipulation, to their process skills, which is their continuation, their initiation of the steps, is their sequencing, is their attention to the task, is their risk and safety analysis of the task, as well as their sensation. Right, you've just put your hand on a boiling hot kettle. Were you aware of that? No, no idea at all. Got no feeling in my hand. You know that. You know, visual perception. You've just knocked over those things twice as you've walked into the cupboard. You've just hit the cupboard twice. You now got bruises on your arms. Were you aware of that? No, I didn't see. Okay, is that visual neglect? Is that sensation? Is that concentration? So that's what when I look at people doing things, I'm looking at it in a very different way from most people. So watch out what you take. As I said, everything is about the person in the middle. Everything is about that patient in the middle. So again, you're looking at all of those and how they impact. One key thing OT loves to get involved in is that environmental, okay? I was talking to some people at lunch about the fact that I've got a 27-year-old at the moment and he's in a minimal conscious state, but they have decided that there is no further rehabilitation. His family are really upset about it because you can imagine at 27, he's going to be basically a vegetable for the rest of his life. That's really what one of the nurses told him, which was horrific. They are fighting his corner, but essentially what happened was he's discharging. He's put in a veterans nursing home. Okay, so he's surrounded by demented people that are 65 plus, no stimulation. The environment is completely inappropriate for him. I walk in and feel totally depressed because it is just so sad. And there he is, sat in his great big Azalea Tilton Space wheelchair and with his parents just doing passive range of movements every 5 seconds. So I've been involved with him for a year, but the biggest driver at the moment is to find him the right and appropriate environment to be in to try and get stimulation. And what we've done in 1 year is he is able to track consistently. He is following us with his eyes. We've just got the Tobii system in and he is turning his telly on and off, knows how to do that. And he is when we direct him on the screen, he is picking up stuff on the screen and he's able to actually do that. We know there is something going on up there. We know he has cognitive understanding and ability. And we're really frustrated because we can't really do anything about it. So environment's key. Levels of independence. This is quite key for support workers to understand. I don't know how you grade in your notes and how you register this, but a lot of what I'm doing in my goals is saying, okay, when you say independent, what does that mean? And they'll go, I want to do it on my own. Okay, so the thing is though, you can't actually walk. So is that going to be realistic that you want to be able to take the dog out, walk the dog and do that on your own? How could you do that? What level of independence can we talk about in this? Can we get you a motorised wheelchair? That means you're independent. You don't need somebody with you. You can operate your own wheelchair. Oh, right. Well, no, I don't want to look disabled. Okay, fine. So then what you're saying is, somebody drive you so that you can let the dog out of the car and they can run around and then the dog comes. Is that your level of independence? Everybody individually is going to have a very different level of what independence means for them. Everybody. So we have to be very clear that what I am writing down okay, the goal is that this chap wants to be able to go to the shop independently, select 5 items to make himself a cooked breakfast in the morning, is the same as what your expectation is of that independence. Your manager is of the care agency, because they've run a risk assessment and said he can't go out on his own. The parents who are sat there going, oh my God, he got run over on a pedestrian crossing and that's how the accident happened. I'm never going to let him out of my sight again. So we've got to work out what those levels of independence are when we're writing our goals and make sure that it's realistic for them, but it's realistic for everybody else around. So that's why when we talk about, if you're writing, I used to love it. The physios used to go fully independent, walking down the corridor, can go home. Right, okay. So I'd go to the bed and then I'd be really tricky and then they'd get up and they'd start wandering down and there'd be 2 people on either side with a stick. But that was fully independent. And I'd say, right, okay, so when they're going home, there's no one at home, there's no care. And actually he's got a flight of stairs of 10 with no banister on it. And you're telling me he's independent to go home. They used to hate me in the hospital. You can imagine. Multidisciplinary meetings. So, yeah. And yes, again, this is very much like, this is what I always say with the support workers that I work with. I don't know about you guys, but we have a lot of the support workers that we work with, we develop our own computerized systems. So people write in and the therapists actually determine what questions they want to ask of the care plan, but also of the support workers. So how many outbursts of anger were there today? Did you complete the ABC? I might say, were they able to get up, wash, shower independently, consistently, or did they need prompting to do that? Did they need to be assisted in any way? Blah, blah, blah. And it's like tick box, tick box, tick box. And then we all get sent it every single night. My email box is rammed. But essentially, on very intensive cases with lots of people on it, we need that support worker note to actually learn about the changes within the rehabilitation programs. It's key to our program. Okay, so that was a whirlwind trip of rehabilitation.